There are stories in the Bible that it seems like I have known all of my life. And stories many of you have known as well. Among them is the story of three young Jewish men who, because of their religious beliefs, were thrown into a hot furnace to die. We call their story the three Hebrew boys in the fiery furnace. I cannot tell you, my brothers and sisters, which of two things I learned first. My ABCs or the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I remember owning a children's Bible, which is still in my possession, and on one of its pages is a black and white picture of a large furnace, and through the doorway of the furnace one could see three young men standing in the midst of the flames, but untouched by the fire. And when I think about the condition of our nation today and the unsettling and chaotic times in which we live, the story of these three Hebrew boys comes to mind. And if you will journey with me for the next 2 hours, I'll tell you why. We know the story of the three Hebrew boys who were carried away into Babylonian captivity during the reign of a king named Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And once arriving in the land of their captivity, their captors began the process of reorientation, re-education, and the reprogramming of these boys in an attempt to strip them of their culture and their heritage and their identity, which you know is what the captor does to the captive and what the oppressor does to the oppressed. So you're no longer who you are, but now the oppressor says you are who we want you to be. And so the aim is to redefine who they are by erasing their culture, their history, and most important, taking away their God. In this case, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and replacing their God with Babylonian gods. Same thing happened during slavery. Slave master tried to spoon feed the slaves with a white god, a god who sanctioned slavery, because whoever educates you and teaches you tells you what to think and how to think, which is why our ancestors started black schools so that we could have black teachers and so that we could learn our own history. King Nebuchadnezzar said, in order for me to keep these boys in line, I need to take away their old names and give them new names. Not Hebrew names, but Babylonian names. You do know, don't you, that their Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But Nebuchadnezzar changed their names to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But even after the name change, these three exceptionally principled young men, including their fourth friend Daniel, refused to be defined by their captors. They said, "We know who we are, and we know to whom we belong. We are Hebrew children, not children of the Babylonians. We may be in Babylon, but we don't belong to Babylon." As a people, particularly our young people, we need to know who we are and to whom we belong. You don't, young people, you don't belong to the streets. You don't belong to this toxic culture in which you live. You don't belong to teachers who think you can't learn. You don't belong to a prison industrial complex that assigned you to a prison before you were born and has already prepared a cell block with your name on it. You don't belong to the devil. You don't belong to low expectations. You don't belong to the bottle and the needle stuck in your arm. You belong to God. And you are more than what people say you are, and more than what the oppressor says you are. And you've got to say to the oppressor, "Don't tell me I'm headed for prison. Don't tell me I can't learn. Don't tell me I'm not qualified. Don't tell me I'm not as good as anybody else, regardless of the color of my skin." Today in America, there is an attempt to wipe out our history from the history books. An attempt by the dominant culture to hide the ugly sins of slavery and racism, to erase Martin Luther King Day, to erase Juneteenth to whitewash Black History Month, to undermine diversity, equity, and inclusion rather, which makes America not weaker but stronger. But I'm here to tell you, we're not defined by others. We're defined by the God who created us in his image and his likeness. And these three Hebrew boys said, you may call us Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the names you have given us, but we know our real names. We know the names our mama gave us. We know our Hebrew names, and changing names won't change us. Even in the midst of their captivity, these three young men remain faithful to God. And because they're faithful to God, God blesses them. My brothers and sisters, you need to know that when you're faithful to God, God is faithful to you. When you're faithful to God, God will bless you, because God is faithful to us even when we're not faithful to him. God blessed them even in the land of their oppression. God will bless you in the midst of your oppression. And so these young men are highly favored, not just by God, but by King Nebuchadnezzar himself. King Nebuchadnezzar says to himself and to his kingdom, these are my boys. These three young black men, Hebrew boys, doing well in a strange land, doing the best they can where they are with what they got. You know, sometimes all you can do is the best you can where you are with what you got. And yet it is at the height of their success, it is at the height of their prosperity that their enemies seek to destroy them. At the height of their success, at the height of their blessing, when all is going well in their lives, when they are highly favored, it is at that point where the enemy tries to destroy them, because the enemy doesn't care if you're doing bad. When we have been blessed, we got to be extra careful, because our blessings can become our downfall. The higher you climb, the further you can fall. And isn't it sad that so many of our politicians in high places, and many have been doing wonderful things for people, isn't it sad to see them fall because they cannot handle power? And power handles them, and at some point they feel entitled because they do so much for others. It's sad for them to fall. I don't rejoice when they fall. It's sad because some people are ruined by their blessings and ruined by their power, because power corrupts. They can handle scarcity, but can't handle prosperity. And so these three young men were cut above the other young men of their day. They lived lives beyond reproof. They were just different. It's okay to be different. I said, in a culture that wants to make us the same, wants to make us carbon copies of each other, a culture that wants us to think the same way and act the same, it's okay to be different. You don't have to be like everybody else or think like everybody else or do like everybody else or dress like everybody else or act like everybody else. You can dare to be different. You can dare think for yourself. These young men, and I say it all the time, I don't want anybody, I may want somebody to tell me how to think, but not what to think. You don't want to be in a church where anybody tells you what you got to think as if there's no other way to think other than the way they think, because God made us free to think, and God made us as Baptists with a free will even to interpret scripture for ourselves. Even if you're wrong, you got the right to think the way you want to think. Don't let anybody do your thinking for you. These young men had impeccable character, and so their detractors couldn't find any dirt on them, because people are looking for dirt on you. They could not lure them into compromising positions. And some people, can I tell you a secret? Some people don't like it when you're different. And when you think for yourself. They don't like it when they can't pull you into their messy lives, in their toxic environment, into their nonsense. You can't let the wrong folk get in your business. There is business and there's business. You can't let folk get in your business, and you got to stop putting all of your business on Facebook. Letting strangers know your pain and your hurts, exposing your weaknesses and temptations for the world to see. There's some stuff you ought to keep to yourself. Don't tell everything. Well, back to my sermon. Listen, King Nebuchadnezzar is driven by his own ego, his need to be worshiped. I'm going somewhere with this in a minute. So he erects a golden image that is said to be about 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. Whatever that looks like. He builds a monument to himself in the form of a statue, another god, and then he commands that when the people hear the sound of the music, because you know music makes folk they lose their minds. Sometimes we sing, but we don't think about what we're singing about. Devil gets in the music. He says, when they hear the sound of the music, everyone in the kingdom is to bow down. And the penalty for not bowing down and worshiping the golden statue was to be cast into a fiery furnace. You talk about Freemason before you did. And knowing that these three boys would never compromise their faith, knowing that every day of their lives they lifted up their eyes toward Jerusalem, the holy city, and prayed to their God. Their enemies knew that they could use not their politics, but their religion as a means of their destruction. And so they waited for the opportunity, because you got to wait for the opportunity to bring them down. And so in order to embarrass them in the eyes of the king, the enemies of these three boys said to Nebuchadnezzar, didn't you issue an executive order from the Oval Office? Didn't you issue an executive order stating that when the music played, we are all to bow down and worship the golden image? Didn't you say that the penalty for not obeying the command was death in a fiery furnace? Well, these three boys you put in high places in your kingdom are refusing to bow down. The music is playing, but they ain't bowing. Here's where I'm going. Whether you know it or not, for the past 6 weeks, we've witnessed a Nebuchadnezzar sitting in the White House, polishing his golden statue. We are witnessing one who would be king. And before our very eyes, you may not like this kind of preaching, but before our very, preaching is not just about pie in the sky. Preaching is not just about getting to heaven if we get there. Preaching is about now. Preaching is about our pain, our hurt, and what we're going through in America. We've got a man in the White House who is polishing a golden statue. And the statue is a statue of himself. Before our very eyes, we're witnessing the shameful remaking of America. Not a remaking for the people, but the remaking of America for a few wealthy white men who now are in control of America, because America for them has become a cash cow for the rich and the powerful, and the rest of us are left out. Dismantling institutions, dismantling agencies without replacing them with something better, destroying but not reforming, tearing down but not building up. We're watching, and Black America better wake up. We're watching in disbelief the firing of thousands and thousands of federal employees who can no longer care for their families. We're watching the rounding up of immigrants being rounded up like cattle, living in fear, unable to sleep at night. But let me tell you what's happening. Many who voted for him are now tasting his wrath. And they were all right as long as he was hurting other folk who didn't look like them. They were all right as long as he was taking jobs from other folk. They were all right as long as he was putting black folk in their place. But what about now? Malcolm X said it a long time ago. The chickens are coming home to roost. And here is, thank you. I'm glad somebody think I am. And here is Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, traveling to the White House, 6,000 miles from home, seeking help for his beleaguered people, fighting against Russian aggression, thinking that he was coming to sign an agreement that would bring peace to his embattled country, but instead he was ambushed, not in the Old West, but in the White House, embarrassed, bullied by the bully of bullies, because the Ukrainian president refused to bow down to the golden statue, and because he refused to kiss his ring. I said ring, refused to kiss his ring. Here is a foreign leader with more courage to stand up to the bully, more guts to stand up than members of the Republican Party who are co-conspirators in this national disgrace. Can I preach? And what all of this means, my brothers and sisters, is that in these times in which we live, we need a faith for the furnace. We need a faith that will withstand the heat. And we need to do more than pray. I love prayer. I've been praying all of my life. I wouldn't be here this long without prayer. But the problem we have sometimes as black folk, we want to put in God's hands what God keeps putting back in our hands. We want to leave it all to God as if that absolves us from what we need to do ourselves. Civil rights movement wasn't just about prayer. It was about protest. Prayer was the fuel used for the protest. Prayer strengthened the resolve of the protesters and placed them in the hands of a loving and powerful God. Prayer helped them to love their enemies and not hate their enemies, but it was protest that changed this nation. And now it seems that all of the changes have been for naught. Reverend Leon Sullivan, OIC, wasn't just about prayer. Selective patronage was about protest. We got to protest. We got to organize. We got to boycott. We got to fight. Most importantly, we've got to elect the right judges. Because it's not just about presidents. It's not just about mayors. It's not just about legislators. It is about judges. Because it's the judicial branch of government that decides how far the executive branch can go. And we've lost the legislative branch because they're too divided. It's the judicial branch that is going to decide how far the executive branch can go in ripping this nation apart. We've got to elect the right judges who are bold enough to say, that's enough. That you can't cross this line. We need faith for the furnace, because the furnace is hot. It's hot, y'all, and it's gonna get hotter. And if a change is gonna come, we must be the change we seek. Y'all getting quiet now? But at times like these, we need faith for the furnace, faith for the flames, faith for the fire, a faith that can stand the test, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I want to know, can your faith survive the furnace? So when Nebuchadnezzar heard about these boys' refusal to bow to the golden calf, he went into a furious rage. He threw a temper tantrum. Bring these boys to me. Is this true? What I've heard about y'all? He said, y'all. If so, I'm going to give you one more chance to bow. To which they replied, don't bother. You can give us 20 more chances. Don't bother. We're not even going to discuss the matter with you. We're not even going to defend ourselves, because it ain't nothing to defend. So be it. Throw us into the flaming furnace. The God we serve, I said, the God we serve will deliver us out of your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods. We will not worship the golden statue you set up. And the furnace was heated 7 times hotter than normal. It was so hot, y'all, until the soldiers who threw the boys in the fire, they burned up. Okay, let me close this. Let's not miss the full impact of these 3 boys' response, though. We know our God is able. We know, because there's some things you ought to know. And you ought to know them for yourself. Not what mama told you, not what you read in a book, not what some preacher told you. You ought to know it for yourself. We know our God is able. But if not, if our God chooses not to deliver us, it ain't gonna make a difference. If we burn in the fire, our God will still be God. See, King, you don't understand. You don't understand. Our faith does not depend on God saving us. Did you hear what I said? Our faith does not depend on God. Some people's faith is predicated on what God does or does not do for them, as if God can be manipulated. Lord, I'll serve you, but only if you save me. I'll serve you only if you bless me. I'll serve you if you deliver me from what I want to be delivered from. God didn't save the Apostle Paul from Nero's chopping block, or Peter from being crucified upside down. God didn't save 6 million Jews from burning in the ovens of Auschwitz. God didn't save black folk, 3,000 of them who've been lynched in America. God didn't save Dr. King from an assassin's bullet. But these 3 boys said, but if not, we need an if not religion. I said we need an if not religion. If he doesn't do it, it's still gonna be all right. If you don't do it, you're still God. If you don't save me, if you don't raise me from my sick bed, if you don't deliver me from the hand of my enemy, if my cancer doesn't go into remission, if my mama is not healed from ICU, I'm still gonna serve you. I'm still gonna worship you, because you are God and you're able. And you see, the problem is that the king says, the king says, and let's see what God is gonna save you now. But you see, the king didn't know their God. That the king knew his God, but he didn't know their God. They didn't know Hananiah's God, and they didn't know Mishael's God, and they didn't know Azariah's God. They didn't know that in Hebrew, Hananiah means the Lord will take care of me. They didn't know that Mishael in Hebrew means who is like God. They didn't know that in Hebrew, Azariah means the Lord helps. The king's God was a golden statue, but the Hebrews' God was the creator of heaven and earth. And so the king thought they were in his hands, but he didn't know that they were in God's hands, because you need to know whose hands you're in. You need to know who made you. You need to know who takes care of you. You need to know who watches over you when you slumber and sleep. King, you don't know their God. He's the God of all creation. He's the God who made us. He's the God of Abraham. He is the Lord, my shepherd. He is David's, the Lord is my light and my salvation. He's my God. He's your God. He's grandmama's God. He's our God. He is Jehovah Jireh. He's the God who raised Jesus from the dead. Do you know him? Do you know him? Do you worship him? Do you serve him? He is God all by himself. Yes, yes, yes.